Nightmare nerds, welcome to our new episode of Nightmare Revisited for what I think is one of the most underrated horror movies of the 90s. I'm not sure what Killian thinks, but it's probably fucking stupid. So, really glad we're going to talk about I'm just kidding. He's so great. He's so handsome over there. Like, look at it. You can't... I can see him, you can't see him, but he's just looking really, really handsome today. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about Robert Rodriguez's The Faculty, which again is one of my favorite horror movies, favorite kind of creature features, I guess is what you could call it. Even though I feel like it toes the line between a bunch of different types of horror movies, which I think is really interesting and something that we're going to talk about today. But first and foremost, Killian has watched Hunter x Hunter.
Yes, I have.
And so before we dive into this beautiful, beautiful movie, the past few weeks I have been advocating for this man to watch Hunter x Hunter, and now that we're here, I need, in the next 3 minutes or so, for you to tell me your thoughts.
I feel bad. I'm just going to preface
first things first.
Stating I feel bad.
I feel absolutely awful about everything I've witnessed.
Because you really like that movie.
I really do.
And oh boy, do I hate that movie.
Damn, really?
Yeah, I hate that movie. It ended, and I said out loud, I hate this movie.
Sucks.
It's so the reason that I dislike the movie so much is because for the first I'm gonna say hour ish, nothing, at least nothing is happening. And it's not even like good nothing. It's not like, oh, this is building to something. It's just like nothing is really happening. Because they're not checking in on the husband enough.
They don't. They don't at all.
Enough.
Which is what I think is really interesting about it. So I vehemently disagree with you, and you're wrong, and you're stupid. But but that being said, I respect you. And
I was gonna say there's that, and then the last act of the film lacks any and all verisimilitude with the rest of the movie.
Go on.
I am asked to believe that this woman, who is married to a trapper and a skinner and a hunter, and who lives out in the woods, and who comes from a lineage, of her own words, a lineage of trappers and hunters, doesn't know how to skin anything, doesn't know how to defend herself. She goes through at one point talking about like how her grandfather used to lay traps and talk about laying traps, which doesn't vibe with me in everything else that she does when like the chips are down and she realizes what's happening. Like, she is the most useless human being, which doesn't make any sense given what they've given her in the story.
These are human beings we're talking about. I mean, they're fake human beings, but no human being is useless. I just want to say, number one, except for
this
maybe
person.
No. Except for maybe my ex-girlfriend right now. Because the only thing she's been good for is the past few weeks has been causing stress by selling our house. So, but we'll forgive her eventually. I just so disagree. That is really fascinating. I guess I haven't seen it in a few years, but to me, we've already done a podcast on this, but we're gonna wrap this up in the next minute, and then we'll talk about The Faculty. But I thought it was fascinating that we follow Devon Sawa's character like through this and through this kind of like he starts tracking this monster. We think there's like a wolf that's come back or something, or some sort of thing that has returned to the area that he's living in. And then
also the wolf looks awful.
It sure does. I'll give you that. But we get to this point where he comes across that scene in the woods, and then from this point, like from that point up until to that point in the movie, I really feel like we're like, okay, this is his story, right? And I think we're all led to believe that. But then he disappears from it at a very odd time. And I found that fascinating. Like it was something I truly didn't expect. And then the focus kind of shifts on, well, is it the daughter's movie because he's the one she's been training? Like, is she going to step up and take this? Is it the stranger's movie? Does he have something more to do about it? And I think the last person on that list of whose movie it would turn into was the mother's movie. And I found it to be this interesting story of this woman who has kind of been forced into what her husband's male reality of how he wants to live. And though she does say, like, she gives those instances of her character, it's like, oh, I come from a lineage of this, blah, blah, blah. And that she does accept, like, there is a conversation, I'm pretty sure, where she's like, you know, we did this together, I accept it, but she lives in his world. And it's almost like that even transfers from this other additional stranger who is this male presence that comes into her life. And then by the end of the movie, they've shattered her life and her perception of what she would want it to be so much that she turns into the worst version of them possible. And like, I found that super fascinating. And there's that one shot at the end where the camera dollies like around, or it's more like it turns, and you're like, they're not going to show us like this man's entire skin, face, and body, are they? And then they do it, and I'm like, hell fucking yeah. And it is so disturbing to see. That's my take on it, but you can hate it and be awful if you want, and like that's fine. We can do that too. It
is so. Again, we'll hop off this pretty quickly, but my thing on it is I don't disagree that
this has turned into a Hunter x Hunter podcast. Everybody strap in because it's going to be a fun day.
Apparently, this is going to be a long episode, I guess. So I don't disagree that she is like being forced to live in this, like, I guess, like traditionalist masculine, like, world of her husband. That is like, in like, you can't argue that. It's inarguable that that is what's happening. But what I draw issue with is the fact that regardless of whether or not she wanted to, it has been made clear that she picked up a bunch of tricks and stuff, not only from her husband, but from her family lineage. When they ran out of traps that her dad made, she goes, well, then we'll have to do it the way my grandpa used to do it. And then she gives her daughter an entire, like, crash course in, like, old school dirty trapping tricks, which is awesome.
Ew.
But it's well, no, because like she the
dirty trapping. This movie could be. This is actually a sequel to Showgirls. Anyway, continue.
Oh my God! So she does this, and then like she knows. They make it clear that she knows how to hunt. They make it clear that she like knows her way around the woods and around, like, so it makes sense that she would know how to take care of herself. And I'm not saying that she should be like a kung fu master or anything, because that would also be stupid. But what I'm saying is when she comes into the house,
sounds pretty cool. If she was if she was a kung fu master, this movie turns into something special.
Well, it certainly does. But when she comes into the house after realizing what is going on, she doesn't go to the threat with her gun. She becomes like absolutely useless. And then when the guy's attacking her, she doesn't attack his wound that she helped to patch. She knows it's there. She doesn't attack his wound. Her daughter just comes out and stands there and watches it happen. She doesn't do anything. Her daughter, who is also grown up in this like rough and tumble, like outdoor survivalist landscape, like just sort of watches this guy, this wounded, hobbling man, as he like takes out her mother, her able-bodied mother, And then, like, apparently doesn't do anything, and he kills her.
Listen, I hear you.
And
I hear you.
It feels like the movie is incredibly misogynistic.
Interesting.
Because it goes, this is this world in which this woman these two women have been brought up their entire lives to know how to, like, hunt and trap and fend for themselves. And in the moment where it counts, they can't do it.
Man,
and
I just disagree. And that's a shame, but that's also allowed, I guess. Like, I thought we would just agree on everything for the rest of forever, and that's what would make us best friends. But now we have to challenge each other, and we have to be those kind of best friends. And I just, that's a lot. This is interesting because in season 1, we did a podcast on this, and me and the previous co-host, we both enjoyed it. So, like, I kind of want to figure out a movie that I hated, that you loved, and then we can have the same kind of conversation. For example,
okay,
we did one that season that I hated, and I'm wondering if you've ever seen it. It's called Come True, I think. Did you see that movie?
No.
It's about.
I haven't seen it.
It's very stupid, but it's about, like, oh my God, go watch it, and maybe you'll love it, and I can be like, wow, this is awful, and we can start 12 minutes of the next podcast talking about how I hate it and you love it. Oh, this is great. No, we got to figure it. Or like, I don't know, whatever. Well, it is funny. We're getting so off topic here, but I promise we're going to talk about The Faculty eventually. But when you said, like, well, if she was a kung fu master, that got me thinking about a movie that I saw this weekend because I couldn't return to my home because we had showings.
Was it John Wick?
It was not. It was The Pope's Exorcist with Russell Crowe. I
have no interest in seeing this movie. Is it any good?
I didn't either, so I had no interest in seeing it. But because it's like, I was trying to explain it to my friend who's not into horror, and I was like, it's the Hollywood Horror Factory type of movie. Like, it's like a major studio that wants to make a horror movie, but doesn't really, like, it becomes so weirdly polished that it becomes something, like, odd and different. So anyway, I had no interest in seeing it. I wanted to see Renfield because I think it looks pretty fun, and I wasn't allowed to go see it because Nicole was watching The Dogs at the time. My ex-girlfriend was watching The Dogs while I was, like, I had 2 hours to kill before I could go home and, like, sleep for the first time in, like, 10 days. So I couldn't see Renfield because she wanted to see it. And the only other thing that was out was like Pope's Exorcist and the Super Mario movie, which I also saw, which was a like soulless piece of cinema. But anyway,
I hear that they slipped a blackface joke into, like, the dinner scene of the movie and no one talks about it.
Dude, yes, and this movie is awful. It feels like I know this is, like, kind of a cliche to say nowadays, but watching this movie, it felt like a chatbot wrote the dialogue. Like, no line of dialogue is, like, substantive. It is all just, like, people are supposed to talk in movies, right? So we better write some lines to, like, be in this movie. And it feels so empty, and I don't understand why people are liking it and, like, buying tickets to it. Anyway, I digress. So The Pope's Exorcist, I saw it, and it's exactly what you think it is. Like, this is a Hollywood Horror Factory type of movie that they're just pumping out. But it is based on this real priest, right? Father Gabriel Amorth. And I go and see this movie, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching it, like, man, Exorcist movies don't scare me at all. And I think it probably has to do with the fact that I'm pretty disillusioned from, like, the Catholic Church at this point. And so that's like a whole other can of worms to, like, open, but they just, like, don't scare me at all. And I'm like, this is whatever. However, I had the idea that there's, like, one moment in this movie where it could have become something incredible, where so spoilers if you haven't seen it. He So Father Gabriel Amorth is this exorcist. He's played by Russell Crowe, and there's like a rookie priest where this real type like possession is happening, right? And so this rookie priest is like, it like for a moment it feels like a buddy cop movie, and like
incredible.
Yes, and then towards the end of the movie, Russell, for just a split second it feels like that, and then towards the end of the movie, Russell Crowe takes the demon into himself, right? Like takes it away from the kid and puts it into himself as is typical per possession movie. And like,
yeah, it was like the like take me not them moment.
Yes, he literally says take me, and the demon transfers from the kid to Russell Crowe. And I would have cried if this happened. There was a moment where I thought Russell Crowe was going to like pump a crucifix shotgun and say, I guess I'm gonna have to exorcise myself. And that he was gonna perform an exorcism on himself, and that it was gonna turn into like a buddy cop movie where the rookie priest is like like this. I mean, there is like that kind of part to it, but like, man,
he's just like, oh man, I don't know how to do this, and he's like, you have to read from the scriptures,
dude. Yes, you like we just wrote the movie right there in that one line of dialogue. I thought for a second,
it's just two brothers.
It was gonna turn into a buddy cop action movie, and like that to me sounded incredible. Like I wanted that so bad. And it didn't happen, and I was really upset about it.
I mean, at minimum, that would be more interesting of a film than the movie you probably want.
That's what I'm saying, though. And even still, towards the end, I swear to God, towards the end, I was waiting for a, like, Father Amorth will return in Infinity War type title card. Like they expanded this shit to like what could. Okay, I'm now fascinated with this movie now that I'm talking more about it, because it's so like the definition of cookie cutter in most of what's happening. But then there's these really weird moments where I get excited about a movie that doesn't exist. Like this is a fascinating phenomenon of like wanting, like loving something that doesn't actually exist.
So it's if I can sort of extrapolate what you're saying is that the movie is by and large super cookie cutter and bland, but is like has occasional moments of startling tonal inconsistency where something happens and you just go, oh,
yes. But it never goes there. Like I don't know if this is just my like maybe I'm just really enjoying my imagination more than the movie that I'm watching, because
it's writing a better movie,
right? For sure. So like the rookie cop thing, like that definitely does exist at some point, but it never like fully commits to that, right? And then like Russell Crowe like pumping a shotgun that's carved in like the shape of a cross and like saying, I guess I'm just gonna have to exercise myself. Like that's art to me. Like in my head, that is like the epitome of the Mona Lisa. Like that would be art, but it didn't happen. And so I have now created something entire. I have Eisensteined myself. I have taken two unrelated images, one existing and one non-existing, and created something new in my head that I think is like it literally could be the greatest piece of cinema ever not created. And I don't know what to do with that information. I mean, I don't know, but that does remind me of something. Okay, please go on.
Yes. Speaking of like incredible like confluences of things, can you imagine if they took a movie that was Invasion of the Body Snatchers and also The Thing, but it was written by John Hughes and set in a high school? Because that's The Faculty, which is the movie we're talking about today.
Fuck, man, you really brought that back.
Yes, I did.
You were like, man, I'm working. But I thought we were just gonna ramble for another like half an hour and just call this a different podcast. I'd be like, we tried to talk about The Faculty, but we couldn't really do it. All right, you know what?
No, I pulled this kicking and screaming back to it.
That is incredible, and you deserve all of the applause for this. Anyway, okay, so all right, you're right. We've had a lot of fun. We've had a lot of fun so far here on the Nightmare Network podcast, talking about absolute things that don't exist. So let's return to things that do exist. I think The Faculty is a super fascinating but under-thought about movie. But
it's incredible.
Yeah, it really is. But I really want to... First, I want to get into classic... Do you remember the first time you saw this movie and what you thought when you did?
Yeah, I certainly do. Okay, well, so here's the thing. I first saw this movie like 3 years ago.
Wow, really?
If that. Yeah, it's pretty recent for me. But I knew about the movie for quite some time because when I was but a wee small child, I was watching horror movies behind my mother's back. My aunt was showing them to me when she was babysitting me, and occasionally my mother and I would go down to Kentucky because we lived in Illinois. We would go to Kentucky to visit a family member, and on the way back, because my mom loved horror movies, on the way back, she would tell me these stories about, like, she would be like, oh, I watched this movie, and I'd be like, well, tell me about it. And one of them was The Faculty. So I actually remember sitting in a truck driving from, was it a truck? Yeah, I think it was a truck at the time. Driving from Kentucky back to Illinois, and my mom giving me a play-by-play of The Faculty, and I was like 7. And so that's my first memory of The Faculty. And then when I watched The Faculty like 2.5, 3 years ago for the first time, I was like, yeah, that's it.
You're like, I
did a really
pictured
good
that
job.
entirely in my head. It's so funny you say that because I have 2 similar scenarios to this. So one is not horror related, but it is one of my best good friends. When I lived in Florida, he was my receiving manager when I worked at Barnes & Noble for a little bit. And this is a true story, and I literally can't believe it happened the way that it did, because this is not a hyperbole. So I was just packing up boxes to be returned and stuff, and he was unpacking a load of boxes that to be distributed out to the store. And that's very like monotonous work, and we became friends because of the conversations that we would have while we were doing this. And one of the first days we were there, he was talking about how he watched Can't Buy Me Love on Netflix the night before, and he was like,
okay.
He was like, have you ever seen Can't Buy Me Love? And I was like, no, what's it about? Thinking he was gonna be like, it's about this kid who pays this girl in the 80s, pays this girl to be his girlfriend so that he can become popular, right? That's what I was expecting when you say, what's this movie about? He proceeded to give me a 70-minute scene-by-scene breakdown of the movie that he watched the night before. I'm not kidding. It was the most thorough, off the top of someone's head description of a movie I have ever heard in my entire life. He is dead seriously, deadpan doing this, telling me all about everything, every plot point, every story arc, every piece of character development, all the way to the very end. And we get to the very end, and I'm just like, well, now I don't need to watch the movie anymore, Chuck. And he was like, well, I mean, do you want to watch it again? And I said, yeah, do it. He did the exact same thing. I did not interrupt him for another 70 minutes to the That's how bored and how much time we had that I didn't interrupt him. And he perfectly told the entire story. I've to this day never seen this movie, but I think that's absolutely incredible. And one of my favorite stories of all time.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's so good, and I love
well,
that.
Do you want to watch it again?
You want to watch it again? I was like, hell yeah, I do. So that's one. The other thing is almost the exact same thing that you did. One of my friends described to me the entire plot of Old Boy once before I had ever seen it, and then
first of all, I know to that friend.
That is a bit of a violation. But when
Party foul.
Yeah, and then I went to go see it at a later time, and I was like, wow, that played out exactly how I thought it was going to in my head, because we've already been through this, my head creates better art than what exists. You know, like Father Amorth, like obviously cocking a shotgun cross and saying, you know, I'm going to have to exercise myself.
Exercise myself.
Exactly. But that, like, man, like, I feel like that works a lot for like horror movies and stuff, because there were some things that I wasn't allowed to watch as a child, but it was very few. I actually got in trouble once for telling my first grade teacher that I could watch rated R movies whenever I wanted, which was pretty true. But then after that, I wasn't allowed to watch them whenever I wanted because I got in trouble. But like that happened a lot with horror movies, where like my friends would see them first and they would describe them to me, and that I would have this my own version of it in my head based on what my friends would tell me. I feel like that's kind of common for horror movies. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, the first time that I heard my mom told me what Children of the Corn was about.
Yeah,
and. Oh my God, the version of Children of the Corn that I had in my head was way cooler than the Children of the Corn was.
Dude, that movie sucks. I'm just gonna say.
Which version?
They all suck.
Yeah. Hey, Stephen King, love you to death.
We really do. Well, I really do.
I also very much love Stephen King. They have never done Children of the Corn correctly.
No, they really haven't. It's really funny because, like, I think, oh my God, we are not talking about The Faculty at all. I think that one of the funniest things about the Children of the Corn movie is if you read the short story, it is very clearly about a dysfunctional marriage between two people who hate each other. Like, the first thing you learn about them is that they hate each other. And that's like page 1 of Children of the Corn. If you watch the movie, minute 1 is Linda Hamilton telling that dude just like how much she loves him, and that like she's never gonna leave him, and that they're perfect and they have the perfect marriage. And like, I find that hysterical. Like from page 1, these people had no idea what they were doing.
All right, so I see over here that it says in the short story that they hate each other just a whole lot. So what I think we should do, because that's like the main crux of their relationship, what if we made it so they loved each other more than anything in the world?
Dude, I didn't know bits were part of Nightmare Network now, but I've never been happier to know that this is a thing.
Dude, I just do bits. That's
I love it. Dude, it reminds me of the Dark Tower because, like, okay, so have you ever read any Dark Tower? Have you ever gotten on that?
No, and I'm not super interested in the Dark Tower.
It's literally my favorite thing in the world, so
I understand. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I just, like, it's not something that I hear about and I go, oh, hell yeah, I have to devote just a lot of my time to this.
Well, you're wrong. But anyway, just so you know, it's awesome. And like Roland Deschain, the gunslinger, what is the one the main thing about him, the only thing about him is that he will not sacrifice his quest for the tower for anything. For anything. Mm-hmm. Every time during the 8-book series that it even comes up to question, he will sacrifice loved ones, friends, any children, anything to get to the tower. The first thing we learn about Roland in the Dark Tower movie is that he wants absolutely nothing to do with the Dark Tower. Like the first time we meet him, Jake's like, "We need to save the Dark Tower," and he is literally like, "I don't give a shit." That's the first. Yeah. Like, what is going on with Steve? Okay, like, I don't know. Mike Flanagan's the only one doing things correctly at this point for Steve. So whatever. Anyway, so the first time I saw The Faculty, how do you like that segue? It was a little.
It was so good.
It was a little more rough around the edges than yours. So I was born in 1991. And I loved horror movies since the day I was born. I'm pretty sure. And I remember seeing Scream on VHS when it came out in Blockbuster with my sister. And the thing about Scream is that it's such a interesting zeitgeist kind of movie. Like, it has that meta quality of it where it's like a kind of meta attacking all these rules in horror movies that have been established for decades and whatnot. But it's also very much a product and like representation of of teen culture and ideologies of the 90s. It's very, very much that.
Oh, absolutely.
But I think, and so I remember seeing trailers for The Faculty when it was coming out in theaters, and I remember it because it had that very it had that kind of remix of that School's Out for Summer song, right? So it's like, the no more teachers, no more books, and then it would go, School's Out. Like, that was the trailer, and it immediately caught me in because I was like 7 and was like, yeah, fuck school, like, for sure, like, hell yeah, School's Out for Summer. But then also really interesting because we're happening behind it. And so I remember seeing it when it came out again from Blockbuster on VHS. I'm pretty sure I was responsible for going to get this one because I really wanted to see it. And so, but what I find interesting years later is that obviously it's Kevin Williamson, which, he was a hot ticket commodity for horror at the time. He's bouncing from Scream to I Know What You Did Last Summer over here to The Faculty with Robert Rodriguez, which is also really interesting. I think that The Faculty is more of an like a gem of the 90s than Scream is. And I think that, I think you're right. I think it's because it does have that kind of John Hughes mentality where I feel like I get to know each and every one of these stereotypes in this movie. And that to me is super cool and something that you don't get from typical horror movies. Because horror movies do have the archetypes, right? Like they do have the nerd and the blonde and the jock, right? And this one does such a great job of deconstructing those archetypes and making them into people that I think it sets this movie aside from even Scream in that regard. Because of how
So
go ahead.
Oh no, I agree with you, and I think what happens here is Scream is. It comes down to the main subgenre that they're sort of doing the meta commentary for.
Sure. Because
this is doing the exact same meta commentary type thing that Scream did for slasher films for the sci-fi horror genre.
Right.
The alien invasion sort of thing. They literally reference Invasion of the Body Snatchers in the movie.
Right.
Which is, it's a very Scream thing to do. But I think, whereas in in slasher films, a lot of the characters are more archetypical.
Yes.
Or archetypal.
Archetypal?
Yes, archetypal.
That one.
Because they are more archetypal, they are less people, whereas in alien invasion and sci-fi movies, a lot of the times what writers do is they go, okay, this is such a crazy fucking idea that the thing that we have to do is make all of these characters as real and grounded as possible so that we can buy the sort of the suspension of disbelief from our audience with that currency. And I think he did that really well with The Faculty by going, okay, so we're not going to have so much. It's they're at the movie rental place and they're joking about that. It's no, this is all these characters are so people.
Yes.
That you do believe what is happening to them because you believe that they are people, which is just, I think, a sort of referential or a byproduct of like the main subgenre that it is doing that meta commentary for.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that like in terms of like even in terms of like manipulations of the characters and like what we're experiencing through those, like that kind of, we want them to feel real, so we are experiencing this through them, is that what I think the best scene in this movie, one of the best scenes, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think the best scene in this movie, it's not the awesome run through the bleachers at the end of the movie, which I wanted to do like every day after I saw this movie. I was like, because my brother...
it's a great scene.
Yeah, my brother used to play basketball all the time in high school when I was in... So he was on the basketball team, and I was like fourth grade, whatever, like I was pretty young. And so I would be forced to go to his basketball games, and no offense to my brother, but I didn't give a shit about basketball. And so I would run under the bleachers like all the time and try to emulate that scene. Like that's something that I remember like trying to do just because of this movie in my childhood. But I think the best scene in this movie is the scene where, what's his name? Where Stan's character, Sean Haddis's character, it's right after he gets turned, but we don't know it yet. And he runs back to that door, and Clea Duvall, they're obviously such on different ends of the spectrum at that, like when we first meet them, right? Like he is the jock and she is the misunderstood kind of rebel girl. And they've already grown so much towards each other and away from those stereotypes that she wants to believe that it's him so badly that she pushes the last, I remember if it's the last or the second to last, but it's one of their last few things under the door so that he can prove that he is that person, and then he just slowly turns it over, and you can see her heartbreak. Like that is the best scene in this movie to me. It's the one that still sticks out to me to this day, and it's not it's not because of some crazy special effects or creatures. It's because of because we feel what Clea Duvall's character's feeling, and we want them to be different, and we want them to come closer together. But at that point, there's literally a door and an entire body snatcher race of aliens between them, and that's just so fascinating to me.
It's so good, and I think the movie that we got, we wouldn't have got if it weren't for like the specific lineage of films that led up to that movie. Like, so we had the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers,
right,
which is very good. I personally enjoy that movie a lot. And then you have the 70s one, which is way more like it takes sort of like a Cronenberg aspect to it.
Yes.
It is more body horror, but also like the creeping dread. And then a couple years later, you get John Carpenter's The Thing. And John Carpenter's The Thing rewrites the book on the idea of you don't know if the person you're talking to is still your friend or if they've been replaced. It wrote the book on it. And then 10 years, or I think 12 or 13 years later, we get The Faculty. And The Faculty comes out and borrows from that entire lineage. Even going so far as I said, they referenced Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and then the scene where they're having everybody like take the drugs in the garage is just the blood scene from The Thing. Like, it's so referential to its lineage, but in doing it in fun ways, leading up to that exact moment where he just turns that over and pours it out. And you're right, that is one of the best scenes, if not the best scene in the movie, because you watch, like, it's not a bombastic horror moment. It is that, like, realization of how fucked you are moment.
I think it's a moment that really, like, that's the moment. It
also
for me,
hurts.
It does, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that's the moment that makes us watch and love horror movies. And we've talked about this before. It's like, we don't get scared at horror movies. Like, we like the aesthetic, we like the feelings that we were terrified when we were kids, and we kind of try to chase that feeling again. But there are transcendent moments in horror stories that give us something that isn't graphically horror or visually horrific. It's something that attaches to an emotion inside of us and manipulates us in such a way that we feel pure, unfiltered dread and horror for people and for characters and for specific instances. And for me, that's a moment. And it's one of it's one of the reasons why I feel like this movie does not get enough love at all. I think it's a little more cult following now, sure, than it was back in the. How did this do box office? Let's take a look at that. I'm just very interested.
While you're looking that up, I actually kind of wanted to reference you were talking about like that moment is like a moment where you start to like feel and care about those characters, and you feel the care for those characters take an emotional weight for you.
Yes.
And I think it is exemplifying the difference between terror and horror.
Sure.
Because that is a moment, I think, that is chiefly rooted in terror. Because it's the difference between like seeing a dead body on the floor, which is horrible and horrifying, versus coming home and turning the lights on and becoming aware of the fact that everything in your living room has been moved a quarter inch to the left, which means, and no one will believe you, or everything, or that everything in your room has been replaced with a near exact replica of that thing, but it isn't the thing that you left in your room.
Dude, do you watch Barry?
No.
Oh man, you gotta watch Barry. It's so
You're the
good.
18th person who's told me I need to watch it. It's on the list.
Dude, it's so good. But there's this one. You're talking about this thing, and I just have to bring it up. There's this one episode in season 3, which could be one of the best scenes of television I've ever seen in my life. It's incredible. Where he like the whole thing is like Barry is a hitman, right? And he was also a war veteran, so he's very removed from like logical, emotional responses. And his ex-girlfriend, unironically, not I'm saying it, but his actual ex-girlfriend, not his fiance, but his actual ex-girlfriend, is like crying because one of her shows is like going down the toilet because of one of these producers. And Barry's like comforting her, and he's like, what can I do? And she's like, there's nothing you can do. And he's like, do you want me to break into her house? And he's like, well, why would you break into her house? He's like, well, you could break into her house. You could do a few things. You could replace every piece of furniture in there with a slightly smaller piece of identical furniture. Little things like that to slowly make her go insane, like things like that. And like Barry is like saying this to be comforting and like, oh, here's what I can do for you, when it's really the most sadistic and awful things that you could possibly do. It is one of the best scenes I've ever seen in any sort of medium ever. It's oh my god, so bonkers out of its mind. So, but yeah. Anyway, yes, your points are also great and taken into consideration. I'm sorry, I just had to share my Barry story.
No, I love it. Also, if you're still looking at for the box office on this thing, did you find the box office yet?
I sure did. So domestically, it made $40 million on a $15 million budget, which is quite good. I did not realize it did this good, but I guess that shouldn't surprise me. Kevin Williamson was kind of making bangers back in the day. People were just...
Oh, yeah. And then he made Spider-Man 3.
Did he really?
I think he helped write Spider-Man 3.
I have to look that up because
Nope, sorry. I'm wrong. He did Venom. Which, but not like... So this, because I was looking at his thing, I saw Venom. Not like the movie Venom with Tom Hardy.
Right.
It's the 2005 shitty movie Venom with like the dude with the snake tattoo or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, it takes place in a bog. It's bad. I was wrong.
I was gonna say because if I had a nickel for how bad Spider-Man 3 was, I would have at least one nickel, and I don't want him to be responsible for that nickel. That's all I'm saying.
He did, however, write both Scream 3 and Cursed.
Yeah, you know what? They do say, like, that's like a whole thing is, like, Cursed was, like, literally cursed. Like, that movie was, like, taken away from Wes Craven, and, like, all of these really, like, horrible things were happening, and, like, it's a miracle that movie even exists. And, like,
is miracle the word we're using for this?
No, I guess, is there a word for bad miracle? No, that is like a thing where like Wes Craven like kind of disowned that movie, and he was like, they just took everything out of my hands. So that, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully it's the real version's not as bad as this. But man, he wrote Dawson's Creek. Come on, he's out here writing bangers.
But no, it did well. It just like was buried under Scream and then all of the Scream clones.
Yes. How do you feel about
which he wrote one of them?
He did. How do you feel about that, by the way?
I know what you did last summer.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the thing. I own the movie on DVD.
Nice.
I own it. I have watched it several times. I think it's hot garbage.
But hot being the key word.
But I own it and I've watched it several times.
Dude, the sequel kind of slaps. In a bad way. Like, I mean, like, I'm not, like, I will never, ever tell you that movie is a good movie, but it is a very watchable movie. And I just remember, like, the like, horrible Jack Black in Dread's character that, dude.
Yeah.
He was sick, and I'm also remembering all these really random Jack Black things we had to go through before he became famous. Like, he was in the Never-Ending Story... Mars Attacks. Never-Ending Story 3, he was in. He was in The Cable Guy. And then now we get to experience Peaches, like, on the reg. Like, that's incredible to me.
Yeah. So I don't like... I Know What You Did Last Summer. That one feels to me like they just approached him and they went, "Can you do Scream but with this book?" And he went, "But this book is not Scream. It's basically a giallo book." And
right.
And they went, "Yeah, but can you make it Scream?" And he went, "Yeah, sure." And then he did that. And then after they did that, somebody came to him and went, "Can you do Scream but with sci-fi horror?" And he went, "Fuck yeah, I can."
Finally, he was like, "Okay, I can get behind that one for sure."
My favorite Scream... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, you please go.
I was going to say my favorite Scream clone might be Urban Legend.
Urban Legend is super weird, and what I hate most about that movie is the scene where the dog gets put in the microwave, and I don't like it because of that scene.
Yeah, no, that sucks. But like that's a shitty moment. I will say though that everything else in that movie, like, I like it better than a lot of the other Scream clones. The only other one that I would be like, oh, that's up there is Cherry Falls.
Oh yeah. That's pretty good.
Because the twist is so batshit insane that I'm just like, oh.
I wouldn't consider this a Scream clone, but it definitely... Actually, I don't know. You ever see Disturbing Behavior?
I haven't seen it. It's on my list.
Dude, that movie is really, really interesting. And I guess it kind of would be... Who wrote that? I have to look. I guess it kind of would be a Scream clone, not because it's a slasher, but because it has to do with, like... Actually, it's more of a Faculty clone, which is kind of a Scream clone. It's like... It has to do, like, way more with, like small-town stereotypes than, like that. So it kind of globs onto that type of... It came out in 98, which is interesting. It globs on more to that kind of, like, meta... that meta aspect of Scream, not the slasher, but like the small town archetype kind of thing. And it becomes a horror. It's just not a real slasher. That movie is super interesting, and that's another one I would love to revisit and talk about because I feel like it doesn't get enough love. Who wrote it? Let me see. Scott Rosenberg wrote it, of course. Scotty Rose, right?
Scotty Rose.
He wrote Con Air.
Fuck yeah.
Dude. And
Put the bunny in the box.
And Gone from 60 Seconds? Come on. Okay, this guy's got some bangers. Let's see.
By the way, while we're talking about, because you brought up one of your favorite moments, there's a moment in this movie.
I'm sorry, we are gonna get back to the Faculty, but the man you need to know, this is need to know information. The man who wrote Disturbing Behavior, Con Air, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead.
Okay.
High Fidelity.
Okay.
Also wrote Kangaroo Jack.
Boo.
makes me so happy.
Yeah, because it's proof that anybody can write something good and then anybody can write something bad.
That movie rips. I could watch Kangaroo Jack any day of the week, and I don't even care.
We're going to have to put that one in the same sort of pile as Hunter x Hunter, where we just agree to disagree and move on.
Oh, we found the movie. Great. Okay. This was it. We didn't have to go far. Mike loves Kangaroo Jack. Let's go.
But you also loved Hunter x Hunter. It's the same.
God damn it. Oh, you're right.
Split.
Okay. Whoopsie. Sorry. It's been a long week. I haven't pooped in my house in forever. It's been weird. Okay.
I pooped in your house, though.
Were you one of the people that scheduled a tour?
No. I just snuck in and pooped in one of your cabinets.
Snuck in. Got it. Okay, cool. Oh, I haven't found it yet.
Yep.
That sucks. All right. So, all right. We do need to wrap up barely talking about the faculty. So please tell me about this scene.
Okay, so it's super early on in the movie, and this moment actually falls into a trope of joke that I really, really enjoy.
Okay.
Which is a joke that is only funny to a specific subset of people and is treated as a throwaway line.
Okay.
It is a great example is in Beetlejuice when they're talking about turning the town into a tourist destination. They go and we'll get we'll get this guy to do this thing. He's the same guy who brought us the talking Marcel Marceau statue. And that joke is unbelievably funny to me because he's the father of modern mime, and that's so funny.
Yes.
And it's only funny if you know who that is. Same thing when they tell everybody when the principal is like, we don't have money for the musical. And then the drama teacher goes, oh, but the kids were really looking forward to doing Guys and Dolls this year. And she responds with, maybe they can use the set from Our Town last year. That's so fucking funny.
That is really, really, really good.
Anybody who's listening who doesn't know Our Town, which I'm assuming is most of you, because it's like such a niche joke. Our Town is a play that was written in the late 1930s, like 1938, and the whole thing about Our Town is it is specifically performed without a set and barely any like set dressing or props. It is a blank stage, and almost the entire time people are pantomiming everything. So
Dude,
this woman,
it's so good.
It's so fucking. I heard it, and I had to take it back by 10 seconds to hear the line again because I was like, no, they didn't, and they did, and it's one of my favorite moments in the movie because it's a specific type of joke that I love so much.
I wish I could come up with one off the top of my head, but there are so many times that my ex-girlfriend is just looking at me like, why are you laughing so hard at this? And I'm just like, it's such specific humor that it's just, that's incredible.
That joke was written for him and no one else.
Yes, exactly. So there are a few things I want to briefly talk about in our quest to fill 10 minutes of conversation about the faculty. This cast is ridiculous.
It's stacked.
Dude, it is stacked. This is like the equivalent of a 90s Marvel movie, like an Avengers movie back in the day. Like everybody in this movie is insane. And just to give you an example, Selma Hayek is in this movie. For maybe 40 seconds. But that's
Usher's in the movie.
Usher is in the movie. And I'm not gonna. Sorry, no, you go. I could just list people, so it's fine.
I was about to be like, I was like, we've got Josh Hartnett, Elijah Wood, Clea Duvall, and fucking BB Newirth, as well as Robert Patrick and Jon Stewart. Everyone is in this movie.
Here's the thing about Elijah Wood that I think is super cool. I feel like Elijah Wood has a really odd image in Hollywood. It's like he was his own little kind of child to teen star for a while, and it seemed like that was going to be his thing. And then he was Frodo, and then it felt like that was going to be his thing forever. And then he started to do like a ton of weird shows and movies, like that dog show with the guy with the guy who was dressed up as a dog. I forget his name. Yeah. And then you thought he was just going to be the weird guy that like did some weird things after making like one of the most influential fantasy trilogies of all time. But the thing about Elijah Wood is that dude is incredible at like no matter what he does. He's in the new season of Yellow Jackets and he steals every scene that he's in. Like he is always good. And I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for that because he was Frodo.
Well, he is incredible. I truly do love Elijah Wood. One of my favorite things is he, after being Frodo, used his platform to call out the fact that Hollywood has like a pedophilia problem and like grooming and stuff like that, because he like. And he's never said it, but you know that this was his thought process because somebody must have been like, well, what if they destroy your career? And he's like, I'm Frodo.
yeah, for sure.
Like, I've got fuck you money. Like, I don't have to work a day in my life.
He's in some really...
And then he continued to work.
Yeah, and he did. And he's in some really incredible stuff. And especially, like, you ever see The Good Son? That movie's nuts.
Yeah.
And, like, what, like...
That's him and Macaulay Culkin.
There's a movie, everybody, if you don't know this, because I feel like a lot of people don't, there's a movie out there where we watch Macaulay Culkin turn into a serial killer as a child. Like, that's a real thing. Yeah. He kills animals. He tries to kill people. Like, it's insane. And Elijah Wood is, like, his cousin or whatever that, like, is trying to do the right thing. And, like, even that, man, he's just in so many good things.
He's very good.
Yeah.
Good person, great actor.
Yeah. Let's keep him safe, everybody. All right, so final thoughts. We've tried so hard to talk about The Faculty in this episode, but it went a little off the rails. However, I think you did get the point, largely, of what we were talking about. And I guess final thoughts is that this movie is really, really something special. We feel like it kind of got caught up with a lot of other quote-unquote Scream clones back in the day. But I think this is a really special movie. It may be a better representation of 90s culture than Scream was, which has a reputation of being such a huge zeitgeist kind of movie. And it's stacked. Like, the cast in this movie is out of control. There's some things we didn't touch on because we were too busy talking about Russell Crowe. But, like, the visual effects in this movie are so... I think they age pretty well, too. The scene when they're on the football field and the rain's coming down and the lightning flashes so you can see the translucency of their skin, still super effectful. But I think the real success of this movie in both its horror and its terror is the way that they develop and deconstruct typical archetypes and stereotype typical characters, and I think that's what makes this really special.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this movie. I think it's very, very good. Like Robert Patrick is in the movie being scary as hell,
terrifying.
It's so good. Sort of like the reveal of like this thing's Hive Queen is so good, or Hive Lord is so good. If you haven't seen The Faculty, like one of my things going into this is I didn't want to like reveal who it was. If you haven't watched the fucking movie, it's so good.
Yes. And here's another interesting thing about this movie. This is one of the movies that is maybe most benefit. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say it. It was the most beneficial for everybody involved to not confirm their fucking kill.
Yes.
Because everybody gets to come back at the end. And that was always something when I watched this movie I was really happy about. Like, specifically Jon Stewart. when he comes back with like only one eye and like no fingers and stuff, but he's still like, hey, I'm here. Like that to me was always something that was really happy. So from all of us here at Nightmare Network, remember, friendship, kindness, confirm your fucking kill.
Confirm your fucking kill.
But not if it's a body snatchers type of movie. Great.
Yep.
Signing off, we tried really hard to talk about Faculty, and we almost succeeded.
We'll title this one The Faculty and some other shit, I guess.
And a lot of other stuff. All right, goodbye, everybody. Woo! Thanks for listening to Season 3 of Nightmare Network. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and keep an eye on all of our socials for special announcements and videos. Remember, here at Nightmare Network, you share your scares.